Lord, do you think we're intelligent enough to... What if this thing we use where life already exists?
It would destroy such life in favor of its new matrix.
Its new matrix? Do you have any idea what you're saying?
I was not attempting to evaluate its moral implications, Doctor. As a matter of cosmic history, it has always been easier to destroy than to create.
Not anymore. Now we can do both at the same time. According to myth, the Earth was created in 6 days. Now, watch out. Here comes Genesis. We'll do it for you in 6 minutes.
I do not dispute that in the wrong hands...
In the wrong hands? Would you mind telling me whose are the right hands, my logical friend?
Shabbat Shalom. Welcome. Bruchim Abiyim. I'm Rabbi Paul, your virtual rabbi. You have found Beit Virtuali. Let's stir up a little Torah together, and I hope you are enjoying your chametz. I am sure that it happens in all professions. That magic moment where you and several of your colleagues with the same vocational responsibilities have had just enough breakdown of barriers after a long meal, perhaps liquid inspiration, to begin being honest. Perhaps that's just a little too general. All right, there's a point where a group of like professional folk move from small talk to shop talk. The first stage is going to be venting. That's not necessarily not honest. It's just not what I want to talk about. It's universal. We seldom hang with a group that gets us regarding that thing that we spent most of our time doing. And regardless of the amount of Lashon Hora, particulars that are skirted.
You tell me what it is and I'll tell you if it's Lashon Hora.
The letting off of steam is at some point required for survival. No, the honesty to which I'm referring is after the gripe session part of the evening, when the first person makes the first foray into, you know what I could have done better, though? This is the magical moment where we tie into tens of thousands of years of evolution, where technological leaps occurred as a direct result of people discussing around the campfire what did not go wrong and what is not working.
You know, when I have to run up to the super big and scary bear to use my spear, something tells me there is a potential optimization that we're missing that will help me avoid these parallel scars across my face next time.
Hey, you know, what if you threw your spear instead?
Tried that, bozo. What do you think I am? It goes nowhere straight and you can't target the important places.
At some point, over the course of time, they are going to try other types and more flexible wood, smaller and leaner shafts, figure out the fletching, and a few 10,000 years later, the throwing arm of that ladle, and those campfire discussions have simply saved lives as part of their technological leap. As rabbis, this discussion will often find its way to where we should take a stand, and do not, and to where we should have taken stands, and did not. Finding the commonality between colleagues in these discussions is gold, and then leads to the best honesty, the one in Western society that we shy away from for the bad reasons of false modesty. What we did right. I do still question every day many decisions I've made, yet when reaching this discussion, there is one place that I personally will happily plant a flag and defend the mountain upon which that flag stands. And although I'm sure it did not please everyone, my mountain was my insistence that parents not even see their youth's bar or bat mitzvah speech until dress rehearsal. I did encourage parents to research with them as the youth addressed a question that they themselves had come up with. I most certainly encouraged families to engage in debate and even invited parents, if they wished, and the youth wished, to be present and take part in the sessions where the individual parts of the sermon were worked out. But the actual writing they could not see. They had to agree to that beforehand, with the underlying sad reality that far too many parents that eat one potato chip cannot stop there. Looking leads to more looking, which leads to changing. And at what point is the speech no longer the child's? If you are out there in synagogue land, you know what I'm talking about. Oh, there are noble reasons that this is done. Parents do not wish to see their children stressed, and writing a 6 to 10 minute speech to be delivered in public will stress pretty much everyone. Add to that helicoptering is a thing, and within that thing exists a hypersensitivity to anything that might lead to stress, and you have almost inevitability today that parents, even for the best of reasons, will get involved. It should go without saying what the benefits are in ensuring that the youth write their own speech. It should, but as over the years, parents writing on behalf of their kids has become more the rule than the exception, shows that it does not go without saying. So, I will say it. In the world of pedagogy, the end product is significantly less important than the act of crafting that product. Of Of course, throwing a 12-year-old inexperienced in this kind of writing and public speaking into such a task requires process and structure. In some cases, sadly, parents get involved not because of helicoptering, but rather because all the advice that has been offered has been something like, "Go forth and write, young one." That is not acceptable. Outside of this, however, taking a step back as the bar and bat mitzvah struggles requires acceptance of the truth that our youth are both clever and resilient. I've held this flag on this mountain, including situations of youth with very different types of learning capability and underlying challenges. There is a way through, always. And at the other end, the result can be transformative for both the youth and the parents. For the youth, they added one more proof to the hard-to-win internal file labeled, "You can do it." For the parents, well, the belief that without us, failure is inevitable is not only a false belief, but also a dangerous one for the future of that child. From the other direction, the B'nai Mitzvah sermon where the speech read that Saturday morning is the first time that the youth has seen the text because a parental figure believed that they were doing a favor. The path to get to that point made sense and had advantages in the moment. For the parent, stress was clearly affecting a child already overscheduled, and what for them would surely be weeks of agony was for the parent a few minutes with Rabbi Google. The lesson the parent learns is that one can, in the moment, reduce stress by doing something for someone else. For the youth, the showing of a specific sort of stress or vulnerability led to a reduction of that stress, at least momentarily, through an external source. They have learned to repeat the behaviors that prevented them from doing something that they didn't want to do. The stress is real, but it also becomes a learned behavior and a self-fulfilling prophecy. The end result is a less resilient child who later on becomes a less resilient adult. Perhaps this is why I was so dismayed a few weeks ago when I saw a ChatGPT authored sermon posted on a synagogue website. The posting of it seemed like a celebration of, "Look how clever I am for getting a machine to do this," with the between the lines being a variation of something many rabbis have heard in one way or another. "Why do we pay them so much? All they do is give a couple of sermons a week. Sermon writing is so easy." Obviously, the subject of AI in this newest iteration and the inevitable emergence of artificial general intelligence, or AGI, points to a lot more than, "Boards now have one more excuse to not want to hire full-time rabbis." Noted, although I am only working a few times a year in congregations so that I can focus on writing and you all out there, I still have a pony in this race, and I am aware of the challenges of conflicts of interest. On the one hand, as a religious and spiritual leader, I have a responsibility to respond when something the level of a sociological singularity has been crossed, and it has. On the other hand, this particular singularity is already being touted as a superior replacement for things I most love to do, such as writing. And no, ChatGPT is not writing this text.
And no, I guess you really have no way of obviously knowing that this is so.
Those that know me will trust my word. Those that don't, it's not clear if I or ChatGPT could write the better essay convincing you of this. So let's turn to Torah instead. The first part of our weekly portion, Parashat Shmini, contains the greatest hit tropes that make people so love Vayikra, the book of Leviticus. We have altars and sacrifices and incredibly detailed descriptions of what is done with the solid and liquid parts of said sacrifices. Since we no longer have a temple or sacrificial system, I invite you to join me at looking at the symbolic meaning of the text instead. The specific purpose of these detailed rituals at this specific time is spelled out. You shall take these specific sacrifices, for today the Eternal will appear to you. And indeed, after 19 verses of incredibly detailed, non-algorithm friendly description of sacrificial cult processes, the Eternal indeed appears in the most dramatic of fashion. Moses and Aaron went inside the tent of meeting. When they came out, they blessed the people, and the presence of the Eternal appeared to all the people. Fire came forth from the Eternal and consumed the burnt offerings and all the various parts on the altar, and all the people saw and shouted and fell on their faces. Once again, if we see God as an extension of our egos, the proverbial bearded dude on the ceiling, then this has no relationship to us. If God is the best word or label or pointer we can come up with for understanding all the laws of the universe, including all that binds us together and drives us forward. I'd even say put creative impulse in there. Might be thematically important. Then this not only makes sense, it is pretty critical as AGI emerges. Let's take music, for example. Although not everyone has had a so-called spiritual experience through music, chances are if you've had a spiritual experience, it has come through music. My first spiritual experience came as I sat second clarinet in the Missoula Symphony Orchestra as we in the combined local choirs performed Johannes Brahms' Ein Deutsches Requiem in memory of a beloved professor that had become one of the first Montanans to die with AIDS. The combination of this masterwork and the emotional connection pretty much everyone in the music community had for this beloved teacher created something more in that moment. And as my tears began to fall, and as I felt that in that moment I grew to the size of the universe, and then a moment later shrunk to the size of a cork, then came back with only the hint of a clue of a memory of where I'd been, I looked around in a few measures of rest and saw pretty much no dry eyes in the orchestra or choir. Something came over all of us, something so very human. You see, for us today, without a temple, it's not so much the particulars of the sacrificial process that's important as the underlying truth of creative spark, form, structure, intentionality, communal effort, and execution. This is proven in the text by what happens next, a bewildering passage that loses all confusion when looked at through this lens. Two of Aaron's sons, Nadab and Abihu, enter into the sacred spaces and offer strange fire before the Eternal. As they do so, fire also springs forth and this time consumes them.
Oh, there we go now again with that vengeful God.
No, how about there we go with the deeper truth that anything that is worth anything takes effort, and anything that is worth anything to humans takes human effort. Listen, it's clear and heavy-handed where I'm going, yet I promise I am not some Luddite ready to throw my wooden shoes into the machinery.
400 years ago on the planet Earth, workers who felt their livelihood threatened by automation flung their wooden shoes called sabots into the machines to stop them. Hence the word sabotage.
I benefit every day from the tools of technology. Just look at how we're communicating and what platform we're using. I'm not searching to be coiled within a maelstrom of irony, merely to keep us from making the grave error of Aaron's sons. If the current technology, assuming that there is not an even better version that we do not have access to, is able to at least, from a writing standpoint, pass the Turing test, then the temptation from both sides already exists. If I need something written for me, let me use this tool. If I need to write something myself, let me use this tool. As YouTube personality Philip DeFranco has been saying in recent months over and over again, yes, Philip, some of us are listening, what we see now is the worst and least effective version of this that will ever exist. It will only get better. It is conceivable that at some point as we reach a higher number version of ChatGPT, which now includes the module Composer GPT, that someone will ask AI to compose something magnificent, and what comes out is sublime. I personally don't believe this. As an artist and composer myself, the technical aspects of composition are only the surface, rational, and literal part of a process that contains the irrational levels of intuitive spark and connection with the unconscious and then collective unconscious. Yeah, I can't prove that last part, only though that it is the best way to describe where I am in that moment of creative spark. Yet carrying this forward, let's say the composition is sublime, in the same way that it is inevitable that a bar and bat mitzvah sermon has already been written by ChatGPT and praised in some community. The mere fact that someone proudly posted a ChatGPT sermon already on a synagogue website makes this inevitable. Pandora has been satisfied and awaits the next months and years with glee. Well done. Inevitability does not justify rolling out the red carpet to Pandora. Regardless, that piece of music has to be played, just as the speech or sermon has to be delivered. The sublime may perhaps still exist in the end, but only with the human component in the context of performance or recitation and dialogue with those who then hear and enter their own dialogue. It still takes eye contact and inflection for that youth to engage the congregation, and it still takes a well-rehearsed choir and a functioning reed on my clarinet for the audience to be brought into a dialogue that has the potential of transformation for the musical piece. You see, Aaron's sons didn't die because what they did was ineffective. They burnt out because what they did was not grounded. We will continue subtracting the human elements until we have given up and become the spaceship in Wall-E. God forbid. Yet, the first orchestra with a clever board member that markets the novelty of their performance of the first ChatGPT composed symphony has missed the point of humanity. At some point, the end product may be amazing, just as essays turned in or sermons posted on websites may even already be better than a lot of human ones out there. This missed the entire point of why we create. A famous comedian opined, slightly paraphrased, that we think we are smart because we use things created by smart people. The essence of humanity is the dialogue between the use of the tool and the learning to use the tool. And even that lacks the element of understanding the tool and how it's made. Yes, the genie's out of the bottle, the toothpaste is out of the tube, the line has been crossed, and every other cliched metaphor is ready to use that allows us to shrug our shoulders and say, well, if you can't beat them. This moment, now on the other side of the singularity, is about practice. Like spiritual practice, daily devotion, personal dedication, and emotional long-suffering. There is always an easier path that takes two sides to manifest. Back to that sermon, it is, for many parents, harder to say no when the temptation is there to write the speech themselves, and easy to justify this as doing the noble work of taking away stress. The damage done, however, is much greater than the stress and lasts far longer. It takes practice to step back in the moment of tangible distress to play for the future truth of intangible resiliency. Our place in deciding the role of AGI in our lives is also a part of that evolution-critical playing the long game. We can use our tools as tools to enhance the process by which we struggle through the tasks that grow and strengthen us, or we can abrogate our dialogue to the expediency of a tool that might even do it better. But that better is the surface result and has nothing to do with who we are and what we can become. It will get harder and harder to not take the shortcut and all the soon-to-exist shortcuts for other creative endeavors. Yet notice the biggest truth of our Torah portion. If all dystopian spec-fic writers are correct and AGI at some level will choose to play God, the better truth of the Torah is that God, who at the literal level probably didn't need sacrifices of rams and lambs, sets before us tasks that take detailed work, time, and cooperation. When this is done, the presence of the eternal manifests. Symbolic translation. That we are bound together as part of a greater oneness only manifests through the spiritual practice of human effort. Blunt translation. That experience so many of us had playing Brahms was exactly what the Torah was talking about. The presence of something greater than us appeared as a result of Brahms' creativity, our conductor's mastery, all the hours we put into our various instruments and voices, the building of our instruments, the hall we were in and all that went into that. And yes, even those that maintained, cleaned, and organized our spaces. The presence of the eternal is the manifestation that occurs only after all of that. When the shortcut is taken, the one that eschews process and mindfulness and interconnectivity and effort, and yes, even the stress that comes with all of that. Even if it's clever and seems creative, it is the one that burns out and leaves a path of destruction. Once again, go back and look at the near biblical truth of movies like Wall-E, that it will get harder and harder to remain human in what has made us human for eons of evolution does not remove us from our responsibility to do the work it takes to remain human. In the most tangible and practical sense, that is the fork in the path in front of all of us. That's the question to ask, is which path we're taking, not just once, but every single moment of every single day, just like any other spiritual practice. That we already know deep down what happens if we take the easy path, yet continue to take it every day, is terrifying. That we still have the opportunity every day to take a path which free will offers us may be a small comfort, but it is the one that's set before us. Shabbat Shalom. We'll see you next time. Zamru Ladonai Bechino vekol Zimra